we can begin. Good evening, everyone. I am Councilmember Middleton. We are going to start our town hall regarding the marijuana legislation. Okay, take a roll call. Oh, can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I'm so sorry. You want me to do roll call?
Councilmember Rathmel is absent. Councilmember Matavetsky.
Present.
Councilmember Hotchkiss.
Present.
Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councilmember Dundon.
Present.
Councilmember Murray is absent. Chair Middleton.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're gonna start this meeting off with Damian Cornwell just coming up to speak regarding this law. And Damian Cornwell is the executive director of Canny.
What's one? Like, keep the mic jerk. So, folks, just a couple of words. I think we're here to talk about, obviously, the cannabis law. Can you hear me okay?
You wanna try the other one, because that.
Oh, that's much better. Okay. So just a couple of top level comments about the discussion with regard to the enforcement of unregulated cannabis shops in the city. I think the question here is more an issue of equity as opposed to enforcement per se. And the reason why I say that is it's not so much a regulated versus unregulated discussion right now. In my mind, question is that for a level playing field to truly exist in the market right now, it's not really fair that folks that have gone out and gotten licenses to be a regulated shop are paying 21% in federal taxes, as well as a hefty amount of money in state taxes, and are locked in by law to buying from certain suppliers. All right. And then there's a lot of pass-through costs that we're stuck with. Just to peel back the layers of the onion on that, I want you guys to understand that in a regulated store, we can deduct nothing other than cost of goods sold. So if you and I went into business together and had a sub shop, we could make $100, but we could write off the cost of our sub rolls, ham, cheese, mayo, condiments, so on and so forth. Cannabis, that's not the case. You can write off nothing other than the cost of the cannabis. And so, for example, if your payroll is $500,000, you're taxed 21% on the $500,000 you spent creating jobs in your community. That's a big deal, right? In addition to the fact that you're locked into your margin because the state determines in some regards what the cost of goods is that's sold to you, right? Because they have some testing costs and different things rolling in. So when I talk about this really being an issue more of equity, it's cannabis is cannabis is cannabis. Yes, there are some advantages to the fact that regulated stores can test the goods and and we're supposed to know via the testing and the certificate of analysis what's healthy and what's good for the public. But the real concern is the fact that at the end of the day, we're so constricted as a regulated shop. It's just not right that there would be no accountability on the other side for folks. I would never disparage a man from his hustle. I would be fine if there were no law, and then we could just all run. But to have two laws is bad. A law for you that's not the same for you is just counterintuitive to the fabric of our entire society. Right? That's what got us all here. That's why you guys all serve, right? To make equitable reparations for everything that you do every day in life to make your town run well. Not to mention, there's also an opportunity cost for things that happen at an unregulated shop. This is just common sense. If we spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, that money comes in and helps narrow the gap on budget shortfalls. And additionally, as a card licensee, we're pretty proud of the fact that we donate a lot of money. We contributed to vet programs. We gave $15,000 last year to a addiction center. We funded a lot of daycare programs. We do a lot of work with a lot of not-for-profits in the area as per the charge for most regulated shops. We're supposed to do the folks that got early licenses. We take that pretty serious. We're proud of it. There is nothing, no obligation whatsoever, or anything, unregulated environment that would encourage you to do that or make those donations. By nature, prior to the regulation of cannabis, the entire idea of cannabis was to flip as quick as you could, right? They talk about in the rap songs, right? One's two, two makes four, so on and so forth, right? Okay. Should probably take that off the record. Oh, my bad. But you get my point. Just a little levity there. So that's the idea behind it, right? So the MRTA and the laws that exist today was progressive in thought. What makes it not work or grow as fast as it should is the fact that the conditions set forth within that are not really being followed. And if we could do a better job at making sure that all the actors in the playing field could follow those rules, I think we could grow the economy, the cannabis economy quicker. I think we can invest more in our local municipalities faster. I said this in the last meeting. I'll say it again. Selling cannabis is like running water downhill. The problem is when the law is not followed and there's no accountability, it's like we're running it down a creek as opposed to Niagara Falls. And that's been the problem for the New York State from jump. And it's a tough situation. So that's the background I would give you on it.
I had a question.
Certainly.
So, people have been reaching out to me regarding this law, and they're saying, why doesn't the state just handle it? Because they feel like it's an issue with the state. Like when they set the cannabis laws up, they feel like the state should be the one to enforce it. From talking to people, they feel like, thank you so much. They feel like because the state put up all these regulations, they should be the one that should be handling it, not the city. So,
I mean, I can't speak for New York State. Here's what my take on that would be. It's more than likely that the state also had appropriations in the law and discretion given to the municipalities, right? In your town, you may have things, quality of living may be one way in your town and things that are important to your people as opposed to your town, right? So the idea is, I think the state tried to work with municipalities in creating an environment where there could be some give and take because every community is different and their needs and their priorities are different. So when I look at that, it makes sense to me that number one, I don't think the state has the capacity. It's a big place, right? And the cost of that would be exorbitant. It seems to make more sense that you would delegate that authority down to your local municipality. If you're running a town and you're running a town and you're running a town, I would say, hey, this is what I've designed. This is what I want to see happen. And then as long as you have the jurisdiction to do those different things, it's up to you. You have the relationships in your community to figure out the best process going forward. And I think that's what the city of Binghamton is trying to do here. I mean, I think it's important. No one wants to reinstitute the war on drugs. That's ridiculous. Nobody's trying to do that. Cannabis is legal, right? It's a legal thing right now, okay? So no one wants to go backwards here. But at the same time, alcohol is legal. But if I opened up an unlicensed bar on Court Street, BPD would be there and the liquor authority would be there in 2 days. Correct, but when I did own a bar, you know who backed them up? BPD. I mean, they come in deep.
Well,
No
yeah,
question.
but the local police enforced what was a state law, because to me, and we heard this from a bunch of people on Good Cause. So, okay, Binghamton makes this law and it's here, Binghamton. Well, I'll just go to Johnson City and open up my shop. So shouldn't this be more of a county thing versus just the city of Binghamton thing? And then that way you could have it across the whole of Broome County, because you could go to Johnson City, Endicott, Town of Conklin, Kirkwood, anywhere's just outside city limits. And all you're doing is, yeah, you regulate it in the city of Binghamton, but the rest of the county is still open for business.
I couldn't speak to that. You would have to speak with the mayor on that. But my point is, again, I think we're saying the same thing to some extent. There is already a law on the books, and with the help from the local police departments, they will go in and help the liquor authority. There's only a couple of guys in the liquor authority that do the work, and they make the calls and they get the support from those local law enforcement places. So I think that somewhere in there, if somebody had to do it with the county, that's fine. I mean, and I don't even think there should be these all-out raids or some of the things I see in the bars. I'm not even saying that at all. At the end of the day, there just has to be some accountability for what you're doing or not doing. The notion that this has to be a scene from Breaking Bad, where they're kicking down the doors is ridiculous. It's just like, look, don't sell those things to kids, or don't do those things if you don't have a license to do it, or if you've been told not to do it, maybe you might want to stop or wait for the next portal and reapply. I'm not sure. Again, that's beyond my pay grade. I'm just trying to give you a backdrop of how it's working and what the state may or may not be thinking. And then, of course, it's up to the mayor to determine, with the help from you folks and under the advisement of you guys, what's best for the city of Binghamton and your constituency here. But that's not a bad idea, but you'd have to work it out. You'd have to work it out with Jason and the whole 9 yards, and it'd be a bigger deal, especially administratively. It would set you back probably another year or two before you figure it out. And then there'd be, in terms of plugging that hole, in terms of investment coming in, it'd be another, what are you looking at? A couple $1 million lost?
Yeah.
There are some unregulated stores that are doing $300,000-$400,000 a month.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Just to
So-
me, if we only do this in the city of Binghamton, all we're doing is kind of putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg, because that's, if I was a business owner doing it illegally and it was like, oh, I can't do it in Binghamton, and I'm 2 miles from the village or town of Kirkwood, I'll just move 2 miles. I mean, finding open storefronts here in Broome County is not really the hardest thing to do.
But bless you.
Pleasure. So there's a legal dispensary in Johnson City, right? Have
Yeah.
Any others in Broome County?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, no, but like Endicott or Endicott have a legal? in town?
Endicott has a couple on deck to come in. A couple of folks I know that are in the queue they're getting ready to open possibly.
So I'm just curious if they have, well, Johnson City, for example, if they've approached their town board about this. I wonder
I
if
couldn't
you have
speak to it.
any conversation with them in your,
I can tell you from a state perspective, from my experience at the Cannabis Association of New York, unregulated sales, absolutely. Unregulated sales, as well as those that are in the gray market and those that are just out in the open, are certainly making an impact. I mean, I think the state estimates that there's $8 billion a year in cannabis sales, and the state just celebrated its first billion. There's $7 billion on the table right now that's happening. And I don't think you'll ever eliminate the gray market. And I don't think that is this discussion either. I think, to paraphrase the mayor, I mean, I think the issue here is not so much about people that may have, a cupboard hustle, right? But the folks that are setting up bodegas and doing DoorDash, and there's all kinds of things that you can do and getting there, and they're full scale operations, right? And then there's no accountability as to what's coming in, what could go out. These people are not necessarily bad people, but there's just no accountability. So, it's a free for all. So they flip as much as they possibly can. at no benefit to your local constituency or your local communities. So the answer is this, it's really, we could do nothing or we could do something. I mean, it's a time and an opportunity for leadership, right? That's really the real answer. It's like, what matters most to you or me or the next guy? We can adapt regardless, I think, as operators. That's what we do. We've adapted so far. But the truth of the matter is, it's
Unfortunately, this discussion started so long ago that I don't even have the notebook from when I first started making calls about it, but the county was interested and I think I reached out to Batiste, who's in the audience here, and some others back and trying to figure out how it would mesh together. And there didn't seem to be an issue with if we passed it and the county passed something with that kind of overlapping and working together. But again, I don't have my notebooks because this is back in early December, I think, at this point.
To me, and this has nothing to do with you, Damien, it's just funny because with cannabis, it's like, let's do something first with good cause. Let's wait and see what happens. Depends on what states are.
Okay, I think nobody has any other questions for you right now. We'll just get some questions from the public.
okay.
And we'll probably call you back down too if we have any other
Oh,
questions.
okay. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Damien. Oh, no. Is there anybody else here from the public that would like to speak regarding this? You can come on up.
There. Better?
Can you just state your name?
I certainly can. My name is Andrew Pragus. I'm a Binghamton resident. I'm the president of Justice and Unity for the Southern Tier, and I teach I'm in the sociology and anthropology department in SUNY Broome, and I teach criminal justice. I'm here today to speak out against this version of the cannabis regulation law. I, by the way, have no disagreement with Mr. Cornwell in the slightest. My partner also owns and operates a legal cannabis dispensary in Elmira. So the regulations and the difficulties of trying to make a profit in the legal industry are well known to me. And certainly and so I understand the concerns that he's expressing. And I think the state should do more to give relief to the industry, and we can do more to help promote the legal cannabis. But my big concern with this law is the simple fact that it tasks the police with this sort of regulation. The police have proven to be a very poor tool to regulate the cannabis industry, as history will demonstrate. And it opens the door for a lot more collateral consequences when making police the lead agency in doing this. So that's my main concern is the centering of like police and making them the main agency tasked with regulating cannabis stores and potentially illegalized cannabis around our community. we can expect, I would assume that a type of dedicated enforcement of the type that would make a dent in closing down these shops and like keeping up with the game of whack-a-mole would be a pretty remarkable expenditure of funds. Probably require more police, and this of course gives a lot more power to the police department to do that. And that's where I think where my objection lies in it. I think so and beyond that, I mean, and I think kind of echoing what Mr. Cornwall said, of course, like there's no way that we're going to beat the illegal cannabis industry. The illegal cannabis industry beat the feds, beat like every state, right? That's the reason we have legal cannabis in the first place, is because the illegal market has been so powerful and so strong. So while I understand that there's an urgency to do something to support an industry that is being hampered by regulation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This law, I think, looks like you're doing something when it's not really going to do almost anything. And I think that we all kind of know that from, and when we look at even things like the regulation of cigarettes, untaxed cigarettes, for example, right? What happens? And there's a big raid that occurs every 2-3 years, right? And then it was, and of course, like you can buy untaxed cigarettes pretty much anywhere in the county. It's more freely available now than they were, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, even after those raids, right? So my issue is not necessarily with the regulation of these stores or any such, but that the police should not be the lead agency doing this because they've proven to be, a bad tool for the job, and will end up more punitive. And I do worry about a slippery slope. The law itself allows for inspection of cars. Where do you draw the line between customers and between people that are working in the business? If the sticker stores do close down, we all know that the legal cannabis industry is still going to be, the illegal industry will still thrive. Then do we crack down on the farms that are growing illegally, many of whom are also selling to the legal market? So I get concerned around kind of where it ends, but of course, like I think we should all share the frustration of legal growers that are putting in the work, paying the taxes, and they're not. And then someone else hangs up a shingle and is able to, make money in an unregulated way. However, I think we owe it to the city and to the history of the war on drugs and the damage that have caused, the inequalities that have been produced, in order to move very deliberately and to not do something that at the end of the day is more about election issues than is about actually solving the problem, because this law will clearly not do that. So that's, I think I'll end it there. Thank you.
Well, don't go anywhere, Zandy.
I had some questions.
Oh, sorry.
So you made a good point. The one thing that's kind of been in my head, and just, people that are customers versus people that are doing delivery. And, some people just get what they need an eighth or whatever a day. So if they're there every day, they could look like they're doing delivery, but then if you inspect their cars, are you infringing on their Fourth Amendment rights?
I have concerns too about Fourth Amendment rights. I have concerns about this law being potentially used to search people's homes. At the way the law is written, and I would also say, I think that, the way the law is written, it says like they can act on a complaint. So that's a pretty low bar for, those sort of inspections, I suppose. So that was another kind of general concern I had. I share similar concerns, with the law as written. I think that it would be materially was the code enforcement or the health department or another agency involved leading code-oriented issue. And, I know that part of this is not just about cannabis, but is actually about the smoke shops themselves, right? Because they're selling untaxed cigarettes, they're selling a Delta 8, which is hard to criminalize. For all. It is off. This one doesn't work at all. So I mean, they're selling untaxed cigarettes, they're selling Delta 8, they're selling other products that are not legal in the state of New York. In some ways, I think that this is less about cannabis and actually more about regulating smoke shops in some ways, like the actual fundamental issue that we're talking about. But I mean, I have to say, I don't envy the city council or the city government for trying to handle this because it is a complicated issue. And of course, as we've all, I think, as everyone acknowledges, understands, the sensitivities around using police to regulate cannabis, we should all be very, very sensitive. And I am. And that's kind of really fundamentally where I come at this. It feels like a reflexive kind of going back to the bad old days. We see a problem, throw the police at it, they'll fix it. This kind of mass incarceration strategy that has just proven over and over again to be a poor, expensive, unjust solution. So, and I think it's worth, and if it means holding off a little bit, while also being able to support like legal sellers, because I mean, there's no question that if there's ways to support legal sellers, I think those are some of the best things actually that we could do. If you really want to beat the illegal market, is the way to support the legal sellers more than it is to try to crack down on them with police, which they've proven extremely able to do, and they've done it extremely effectively for a very long time. So the reason we're having this conversation in the first place.
Yeah, you said that some of your suggestions you said were taking it to another agency. To you, just what would that look like?
You know what? I don't have great models. I actually tried to research this and try to see if there was other models, and what those might look like. And all of them heavily involved like very like onerous regulation, of like, using police. But the law, as I understand it, the law that they're using in order to try to do this, to implement this, there's like a law that's passed by the state, says the cities can kind of opt in. And as I understand it, that law does not require that police be the lead agency. There's nothing in that I could see that required that. It's the purview of the municipalities to designate an agency or a lead person in order to do that. In the case of this law, it's the chief of police that's been designated in the law to do that. There's no necessary reason it is that person, as far as I understand. I'm not a lawyer of any sort.
I think, are you good? Okay, the only, I think I mentioned this at the work session when we talked, not the work session, the committee meeting when we talked about this before. I think you touched on it, that by cracking down on these shops, it doesn't necessarily, I don't foresee that those sales will all migrate to legal shops. So, and then by doing that, because I don't think that they will migrate to legal shops or whatever, it's, and then, okay, so it's now are we trying to, will a new law come out that tries to go after the other markets or the other means of purchasing or delivering and acquiring cannabis in the gray market? So that's kind of the way I think about this, is like the illegal market or the gray market is strong and it has existed for a long time. And these new shops, I don't see this law accomplishing like what we ultimately would want it to do. So that's kind of what my gut feeling is about it.
I mean, the other thing that I think is really valuable to point out is that enforcement will be just like, there'll be lots of discretion where and how it's enforced. So, I think there'll be some businesses that get hit and some businesses that don't. And like, because drug laws themselves have proven to be the most discriminatory ones. There's a reason like why that these have been struck down and we've tried to go back to something different, like undo them, because they're so, you can find as many drug crimes as you want, right? And similarly with kind of regulatory issues like what we're talking about here. So it's going to be really open to the police's discretion about what shops they hit and what they don't. And, you know, how are they going to determine that? Right? Will racial bias creep in? Will bias against, they don't like somebody? Will other shops get the kind of, they're not going to touch them, even though everyone knows what they're doing because they're, you know, friendly with folks or whatever, right? So I think that there's another kind of piece of this, which was like that there's always going to be a lot of something like this. It's going to be extremely discretionary and could open it up to like pretty vast inequalities. Is kind of another kind of concern, just building off of what you're saying. But I do worry about where's the line? Like this law passes and then like, where's the next kind of step? I don't think anyone, by the way, is arguing, or so far as I understand, is arguing for like more police to be like, you know, going after people that are purchasing or anything like that. So I'm not trying to like fearmonger or anything, but it kind of does beg the questions like, when does the game of whack-a-mole end in the legislative line? Rather than making a good law to begin with that can actually do the things that we'd like them to do, which is namely, I think, like close down or like prevent smoke shops from selling illegal cannabis, selling untaxed cigarettes, and selling all the other crap that is not good for like human health, or the state has deemed illegal and not good for human health.
Yeah, I think, man, I gotta really stretch my memory here, but like even before Colorado or any other state like passed or legalized marijuana or cannabis, I think like one of the strong arguments was that you're gonna save so much money by not having to criminalize this. Your police force will be opened up to do so many other things, and we won't be incarcerating all these people with like mandatory minimums and like that. There's so much that's it's not added to the tax base, but it's no longer like costing people to go around and doing that enforcement or incarceration. So that's I keep referencing back to that, and I think my gut feeling with this is like this is like a regression towards all the promises of like what legalization was about. So
Like I know in my district, I believe it's Cottonmouth Dispensary, and I know the owner for that. I haven't met him personally yet, but just following along, really fought hard to get his license and was, you know, on the verge of like putting his house up and everything else to try to keep putting money in so he could keep his employees. And, you know, I feel for that. And I do feel there should be regulations, but I'm worried with whether it's just a complaint or it's just you search the wrong person's random vehicle. Are we going to do our fiduciary responsibility in limiting the legal liability for the city? Because I'll tell you right now, if I was searched illegally, I'm going to sue the city. And there's other people there that might not be the shops themselves, but I mean, cannabis is legal, so people buy it wherever they feel comfortable. I would always say go legal, but I mean, you could have the wrong person that would be, you know, has a lawyer in their back pocket. And then now what we tried to help regulate, we actually put the city more on the hook for the violation of a Fourth Amendment rights.
What about if we went back through it and made some amendments to it? So we could take out certain parts. How do you feel about that?
I definitely think some of that should be rewritten. I have a real biased opinion on sticker shops. That's why I've not been in the conversation. I had an incident with family members, and because I have a hard time separating my bias is why this is the first thing I've stuck my nose in regarding this cannabis law.
Understandable. Anybody else want to come up and speak regarding? Sure, come back up. Oh, that's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to just frame up one thing. Really appreciate your comments. Again, I don't think this is a conversation as much as reducing the sale of things in the unregulated market. They have always been there. They are outpacing the regulated market. The question is, can I have back the 4% I gave the city and the county? Answer that. Can I have back the money I gave the city and the county? If
No.
you don't have to give it, hold on. If you don't have to give it, why do I have to give it? And I do everything else by the book. But why am I made by law to do that? It's not an issue of how much you sold. I don't care what you sold. As you shouldn't care what I sold. Pay my bills, pay my taxes on time. God bless me. God bless you. Question is, why am I paying that and you don't? What happens to me and my family if I stop doing that? And what happens to you if you don't? That's the question. This is an argument of equity. Your seat is the same as my seat. I don't disparage the man's hustle. What I'm asking for, or I'm not asking for anything, to be honest with you. I was asked to come here. I asked for shit. I'm just trying to help out. What I'm saying is, you need to make the playing field a little more even. Now, there are other ways you can do it. There are other levers. If we could advertise, that'd be great, but we can't because the law says if I put a TV commercial out, your child could see it. Not that I know you have a child, but a kid could see it, and now the law would say, "Well, geez, we don't want that to go in that household because there could be kids in there that are under the age of 18, and we don't want them to see that ad." Correct, but at the same time, in your store, you got all the lights and all the signs and everything you want to do, and because there's no rules, I can't even have a lit sign. It's illegal for me to have a lit sign, but it's not illegal for anybody else that doesn't have any law they have to follow. I can't even have certain colors. I can't have logos that depict cartoons. I got the hottest security. You ask me, we have amazing security. They're the best guys in the world, right? Nothing. And even still, we throw guys out. We've taken IDs, we've done all kinds of stuff. We make sure that, we try to run a tight ship. But even still, it's just not equitable. I think the issue is not so much. There is an issue in terms of opportunity cost of what a municipality can take in. That's true. But in terms of reducing sales in one side or the other, I don't think that's the focus of the discussion. The pie is still 8 billion strong every year. How they give it up is whatever. But there is an equity discussion here. That's not really right when you look at what's happening.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Damien. So I did my own little kind of sting operation without telling anybody. So most sticker shops in this area, you're right, no tax. Any of the bodegas, though, you get charged your sales tax. Now, obviously, it's not getting broken down like yours is, but you are still, I mean, to me, as a elected official, they're still paying into the city and the county and stuff, which is not by the state regulations. I get it. But that's where I kind of hopped around and wanted to check and see what different, whether it was bodegas or sticker shops did.
That's why I said that. We pay an extra 4% in.
Yep.
We don't just pay
Yeah.
I pay the 8%.
Yeah.
So if I sold a t-shirt or I sold anything, apparel, anything like that, or a non-cannabis item, a hemp item, any of those things, we pay regular state tax.
Yep.
However, anything that's cannabis related, we pay the extra 4% in to the city and the county.
Yep.
Right. Plus the 9% back into the state on top of the 8% we pay for those other items. So that's the point I'm making. So that's absolutely correct. None of us disagree. That's true. Got no problem with that.
Yep.
But again, the other 4% can be pretty exorbitant.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the places I hit, and I won't put them on blast, but are actual gas stations that it's clear as day. So to me, it's like this could already, some of this policing could be done already.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, that's a tough situation. It's a really, really tough situation.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
I will put on the record, I absolutely despise sticker shops for my own personal, and that's why I throughout this, I'm like, I'm biased. But yeah, I mean, I feel for you guys, but I'm always against, like that whole, how do they determine what vehicle they search when is really my sticking point, because the last thing I want to do is open the city up to legal liability or infringe on. I mean, as much as I would tell a customer to go to a legal shop, I still don't want to see anyone's Fourth Amendment rights being
No
violated.
question. Nor would I. And that's why I think I don't know. I don't run the city government. Like I'm not king for the day, right? I mean, the idea would be, eat elephant one bite at a time. And that's unfortunately the task you guys have working with the city, figure out the best approach and how you could, most efficiently and effectively do something that was fair-minded and at least somewhat diminish the liability for all parties involved. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's still a question of equity and how do you want to approach it? That's all. That's the real issue here, I think. But that's my story. I'll quit from there.
And I've made this point at multiple meetings on this topic, but the city could be enforcing and is choosing not to. Other areas have made the decision, their executive branch has made the decision that this is an important area. And even before the state allowed an opt-in, we're doing something about this. So while this would give added abilities to enforce, and I lean towards saying it seems like a good idea from my perspective, but I understand why people would feel otherwise. It is additional methods for dealing with a situation that could be dealt with if that was the priorities of the executive branch.
Certainly. All right. God bless you guys.
I gotta just kind of a little bit off of our regular train of thought, but is there anything that you're following that's happening in the state to change the licensing or like requirements or anything of that nature? Is there any like movement in one direction or another?
I know
Around
some
state
folks
level.
in the November queue that are getting through right now, like from a candy perspective, I know there's a lot of folks. I was just talking to a fellow today on the phone who was asking for some help with his application. So I know the wheels change just turn slowly, but I think they're still working through the November queue, and I think the idea is there might be another 1,000 or so. And I think the discussion is still up for grabs, on what they're doing with the December queue. And I can't recall the exact numbers of the December queue right now. But I mean, it's a significant amount of licenses that could come back online. Again, the other thing that makes it hard is at the state level is balancing for those folks is balancing it all. Like, will there be enough supply? Blah, 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 blah. Right now, there's a huge inversion problem, I think, at the state level, or products coming in, which is hurting our farmers. We have a lot of New York farms that are not moving enough or didn't have enough money to scale up, right? You went from the end of that first year, where you have like 30 stores, and then there were 300 stores, right? So it's like, if you have to have a harvest, how do you scale up that fast? And then there was no cannabis lending, and there was, you get the issues with 280E and the federal thing, and it's just made it really, really tough. So to answer your question, I think they're working through it. And I think the total number of licenses will obviously be determined by the Office of Cannabis Management and the CCB. But I mean, they got to crawl before they can walk. I think they need to get through the entire November queue, which is, I think, somewhere around 1,000 or 1,200 licenses. Additional.
I think specifically around like if there's any movement around changing legislation at the state level
Well,
that you're aware of.
there's little things that are happening all the time. Like the governor just signed into law the new cannabis event permits. But I also saw a bulletin that came back from the office, which said, don't you dare do this until the regulations come out, right? Right? Don't just think you can do this because she signed it. So, it's like, it all turns slow. It's like she signed it into law, and then the CCB will go and craft up the regulations, and then there'll be the comment period. and then that'll get worked through, and unfortunately, probably miss the event season. That's the way it usually goes, right? That's you needed that time to move it so you can pay your bills if you were a farmer, to pair up with a venue, but it turns so slow. You'll miss it, and then you won't. Those farmers will be in trouble. And that's the other thing that doesn't help. It's like if somebody's watching the farmers, we keep talking about retailers. The hell with retailers. How about the farmers? So if they're not willing to roll the dice and move it into the gray area, so what do? I mean, they need a heavier throughput to get more product out. There's a lot of families out there that got a lot on the line. A lot of guys that are upside down, and they funded the entire market. And they need all the help they can possibly get. In terms of moving product into the state and getting it sold. I don't envy you guys at all. I don't envy me some days. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking about? What's wrong with me? But it's a tough position. At the end of the day, I think, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and you just peel back the layers of the onion. And I think we start with, it's like you said, it's perfect. It's like, what are our priorities? What matters most to us? Number one. Number two, then what's the way I can do that is the least invasive way that doesn't trample on people's rights and also has an equitable environment so that people don't have to feel like they're taken advantage of, whether in the regulated or unregulated market. I mean, that's it. And then from there, how you do it is why you're in those seats. But that's it. That's what I think is the framework of it. And I hope I answered your question. It happens, but there's not another portal that I know of coming anytime soon. I think they're still working around the edges of what came out in the portal in November and December, which are two big, huge blocks of licenses. And then there's a lot of things that are impacting how quickly those things can get open. But I do know, for example, I know a person who was in the 1700s of the November queue. From November 2023, that is now being reviewed right now. This person is doing their true party of interest forms and literally asking for help on that today. So that's how far behind they are. But that person's license 1743. And I think there's 300 and some open. So my point is that's a big number. There could be a lot that are forthcoming. So I hope they give you some kind of perspective. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks.
Would anybody else like to come down regarding? The clerk, can you read the comment?
We received a comment from Gordon Winfield. Can you please try to get a law to stop open cannabis smoking on city streets so people like myself and many others are anaphylactic to secondhand smoke that are highly allergic to cannabis can't walk down the streets without a protective gas mask on? There needs to be restrictions on where it can be smoked, not everywhere, you damn well please. People driving down the street are getting contact highs, which would cause a motor vehicle accident. That's probably why the Broome County bus driver hit the pedestrian on Main Street. He probably had a contact high, which is from the secondhand smoke from someone who had gotten on his bus prior to him hitting the elder lady in the crosswalk. The odors emitted from secondhand smoke include arsenic, THC, hydrogen cyanide, formaldehyde, lead, ammonia, acetaldehyde, benzene, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, nickel. THC alters perception along with a lot more mind-altering things, which all bus drivers need to be tested before going behind the wheel of any type buses to keep everyone safe. Anyone who smells like they have recently smoked cannabis should be refused riding on public transportation buses just for the safety of everyone, especially the drivers. Driving under the influence of marijuana is a felony, even if it is from smelling it from another person's clothing. I have been given CPR after going unresponsive here in my apartment building parking lot in a Superior ambulance. On January 22nd, 2025, I had to be intubated at Guthrie Lord's emergency room because a person blew pot smoke into my face and I had a severe anaphylactic reaction. People have no respect for anyone in the city, is just worried about the sale of the cannabis. These laws need to be changed in the city to where it can be smoked. I would love to know how many city officials actually smoke cannabis while they are at work on their lunch breaks, or any employees. Personally, I wish and pray that all employees are tested weekly for marijuana before they are allowed to drive a vehicle.
So I guess, what's next? I think there's, kind of the concrete thing that kind of came out was a suggestion of making a change to code or working with the county to maybe run it through the health department
Mhm.
or some of those options. I guess I'm left wondering what happens next.
I think next we need to go back to it again and maybe make some amendments. We'll probably have to meet again. Just to amend it, maybe some more discussions on, more importantly, just the enforcement part, but fairly enforcement. I think a lot of people are worried about that part of it. So going back to the law, like you said, Hadassah, maybe we, we could doing sound, we could, while making those amendments, see what they're doing right now and going through that, because I think that'll take some time. Um, I'm not sure yet, but I think we need to take some of the stuff out of the law to make it um to make sure that it's fair for everyone regarding that. I don't know how everyone else feels about that. I'm sorry, I'm sick.
I also wanted to highlight, since our last meeting, there was one modification to
The education piece.
Yeah, well, and the reporting piece, we
Yes.
added in case people didn't notice the changes. I don't know if it was posted for the town hall, I didn't review. But Councilman Middleton in our last meeting,
Yes.
but requested and it
Yep.
was added into the current.
Yeah, just to
Functioning
give
draft.
some data on this, so that way we can go back and look at it a year from now to see how this is working. But I do feel like we should definitely amend a lot of the action part and enforcement in it, and then come back again and meet with it. Andy, Damien, if you don't mind, I'll probably be reaching out to both of you again. Um, just to see like your thoughts on some things. Yes. Yeah, I'll reach out to you both just to see like what your ideas, like what you're thinking, and I might meet with you again regarding this. Does anybody have any other questions?
I was gonna issue a correction. I think I said Battisti because he was here, but I'm pretty sure my conversation
Was with Fred.
Shit,
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, it was with Fred. I guess we're all set. Were you gonna say something, Mike? Oh, yep.
Motion
Go
to
ahead.
adjourn. I'll make the motion to adjourn.
A second.
Yes, we're in committee, so.